Hi there. Take number, I've lost count. Today we are going to work on a 2 at a time toe up cast on for socks. And this is Judy Becker's famous cast on. So today I'm using a size 8 needle, cable needle, and I find like 24 inches cable works fine for socks. And I'm using worsted weight yarn, simply so you can see better. If you're with us on the sock yarn test, you're going to be using these two gorgeous colors of yarn in Dorset and a Cotswold blend. And I've already knit one pair of socks with the same blend, just different colors, and I've already been hiking in them. So they do have a little wear, but that is to be expected. They're very comfortable. So, 2 skeins, different colors, needles, in the right hand, pointing to the left. Take our first skein, and we're going to bring the end, the tail, between the needle tips, over the back needle, pointing towards me. Then I'm going to take and twist it so that now I have a first stitch on there. And I have the tail of the yarn, and that you're going to have to leave that tail a little bit long so that you can cast on the number of stitches required. We're going to use our index finger to cast onto the bottom needle, and we're going to use our thumb to cast onto the top needle. Let's hold on to that first stitch, and we're going to take our index finger yarn under both needles, around and down through the center. So we got one on each. Now we're going to take that thumb yarn underneath, around the top needle, and down through the center. And we're going to use the bottom needle again. Index finger around and through the center. Thumb around and through the center. Index finger to the bottom, around and through the center. Top needle uses the thumb around into the center. Index finger, bottom needle, and down through the center. Now this is just a sample, so we're going to do 5 stitches on the top needle, 5 on the bottom needle, for a total of 10 stitches, but your pattern will probably call for a bigger number. So where are we? We have 4 on each, and the last one came onto the bottom with our index finger. So the next one's going to go onto the top needle with our thumb down through the center. And then our final one, our index finger, around and through the center of the bottom needle. Okay, now if we turn this over, we can see purl bumps. That's a good sign. This last stitch that you put on with the index finger is going to try to get away. So let's twist it with the working yarn and hold both yarns with your right hand. Scooch those stitches just a little bit to the right and grab our other yarn. And we repeat the process. We put the yarn over the top needle and down through with the tail pointing at us, and then we simply twist the yarn so that the tail is over the index finger and the working yarn's over the thumb. All right, same process. We've already got one on the top, so the next one goes on the bottom, and the index finger loads the bottom needle. 1. Thumb loads the top needle through the center. 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5, and last one, index finger to the bottom needle. Okay, and then again, twist those yarns around so that we don't lose that last stitch. Now you might notice the stitches that are on the bottom needle look pretty normal. The stitches on the top needle Some of them look a little bit untwisted, don't they? That's normal. That is just a result of the way we cast on, and it's easily addressed in the next step. There are other ways to take care of that, but I'm sticking with the straightforward right now. So we have all of our stitches initially cast on, and now we need to work that first row. So we take our needles still pointing to the left, and we just rotate them 180 degrees. Now they point to the right. And we find our first, there we go, our first ball of yarn. And where do we go next? Well, we talked about those stitches that untwisted. They were on the top. Now they're on the bottom. Okay, and those were the last stitches we cast on. So we want to work the first stitches we cast on, and they're on the top needle. So we pull out the bottom needle, scooch our stitches up to the tip. Then it looks like just a V, and that's okay. Just hang on to everything and do 1 stitch, 2 stitch, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. I'm holding on to the tip of the needle as well as the cable here. And we just scoot those stitches. I don't take them all the way off the needle shaft itself. It's just easier as we work. So what we do want to notice is that we have our needle tips above and parallel to the cable. Okay, this might happen. The needles might cross the cables. Do not try to fish out needles from or stitches from anywhere else, okay? They have to be facing straight across. Okay, and here we have our tail that we just talked about, and you can see how easily that stitch would get away. So we have to twist it with our working yarn back over to the top. Let's work that first stitch. And that tail is just determined to get away from me today. And our second stitch. Okay, and I have been knitting continental, so let me just show you with throwing. Okay, into the second stitch, wrap the yarn. And I apologize if I'm confusing people with the, I guess I'm a combination knitter. I put the yarn sometimes in my left hand, sometimes in my right hand, whatever helps me get where I'm going. Okay, now we just let go of that needle, but hold on here. And then we slide the cable back so that the stitches are back on the needle tip. And it's easier to see everything this way. Okay, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Very good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Everybody's present and accounted for, right? We repeat that process to orient ourselves for the second side of the stitches. We just rotate it 180 degrees. And then again, we pull out the bottom, what is at this point, the bottom needle. And try not to get yourself confused about what the bottom needle is. It's just the needle that has the next stitch. We just worked this stitch. We can tell because the yarn's coming out of there. So we can't work that one again. We got to work the next stitch so that we're going to pull out the bottom needle, the one that we had the stitch we just worked. And then we're going to work across the top. And remember before we talked about those untwisted stitches? You can see them right here. They got untwisted because of the way that we cast on. We have the right leg of the stitch towards the back of the needle. typically you'll see them oriented the other way with the right leg towards the front of the needle. So in order to make it with the right leg in the front, we just knit through the back of the stitch. Okay, let me scoot that back. And again, we got to go from tip to tip, and we have to have the cable underneath the tips of the needle at all times. Here we go, second sock, up to the tip. The first stitch is typically mounted normally because we did that twist at the beginning. Remember where we switched the tail and the working yarn at the very beginning? So there's the first stitch, second stitch, third stitch, fourth stitch, and the last one. And there's me jumping off the needle tip. Okay, and again, hold on to the stitches, let go of the empty needle, and slide the cable back. Okay, so that is the cast on itself. Never a bad idea to count your stitches and make sure you've got all the stitches that you needed at that row. And then I'll show you one set of the increase rounds because, okay, we've just cast on the toe and we can tell this looks like the toe of our sock, the stockinette side and the reverse stockinette side. Okay, so in order to start the first increase round, it's a big surprise, rotate our needles 90 degrees, excuse me, 180 degrees. And we know we're at the beginning of a round here at the very beginning of our sock because the tail is at the needle tip, okay? And that's the case on both socks. And later on, I find it's helpful if I stick a stitch marker at the beginning of the round because that tail, you know, disappears inside. Okay, so we're going to pull out the bottom needle, and I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record. That bottom needle is really evident now, but as you start knitting, your toe gets bigger, longer. The bottom needle actually becomes the back needle, and it'll make a lot more sense as you're knitting. So we're going to pull out that bottom needle. We know it's the right one because we just worked that stitch. We knit one, and we hope Watson stops barking. Okay, at the beginning of a sock, it's really much easier to use a backward loop cast on than a fancy make one left or right, you know, especially when you're working with sock weight yarn and size 1 needles. And you can tell you've done a backward loop cast on correctly if your working yarn is between the previous stitch and the one you just cast on. So I cast on once at the beginning and once at the end. But as with all good increases, we don't do it right at the very end of the row. We do it 1 stitch in, and that gives us a nice toe band on the side. And so we should have 7, right? Because we had 5 and we've increased 1 on each side. 2, 4, 6, 7. And then again, we are going to go to the second sock. And here's where it can get, you know, wonky. We just follow the same rule. We want the needles parallel to each other and on top of the cable. Or as you go on, you want the cable behind the needles. No crossing. I apologize. This is about the 6th or 7th time I've done this, and I keep ripping it out, so my yarn's getting a little tired. Okay, excuse me, backward loop. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, one more backward loop, 6, and then 7. Letting go of that cable needle. It's starting to look like something. Holding on to the needle, backing up to get the next set of stitches onto the needles. You got one guess what comes next. Rotate 180 degrees. Okay. And let's see. Another tip to, as you're increasing, especially as you get more stitches on, it's not a bad idea to count and make sure you have the same number of stitches here and here. And then you can tell that you're on the back, or probably the bottom of your sock, the sole of your sock, if there are fewer stitches here than here. A lot of sock patterns begin at the instep, which is an unlikely sounding place to me. It's the instep is the top of your foot, you know, that you look at when you look down. And the sole is the bottom of the foot. So don't strangle this, but don't leave it all floppy either. And the tension will work itself out. It should. Backward loop. How do we know it's right? The working yarn is between the previous stitch and the one I just cast on. 1, 2, 3, 4, and one more, 6, 7. Then we make sure we're parallel, not getting turned around. We know that we're on the second side of our sock, the sole of our sock, because the working yarn is not at the end that we're starting at. Okay, last one. Thanks for bearing with me. Okay, so the next round is a resting round, and I won't make you watch me do all that. But if you've got any questions, please put them in the comments below, or you can email me. And after you get on your way with your foot, I'm going to do another one of these videos to talk about doing gussets, 2 at a time, and turning the heel. Okay, I hope everybody has a fantastic sock journey, and we'll put the resources, information that I used to make this video down in the description box. All right, talk to you soon.